That's really all you need to do with Bitcoin, really, is just buy it and sit on it.
That's it.
You don't need to day trade and this and that. Like I had an eye-opening thing. Michael Saylor said recently, he goes, look, I've written all these books, and he goes, and I still get it wrong. He goes, just buy it and hold it. Timing the market, just forget it. Buy it and hold it. And I was like, okay. That's when I converted my IRA last year.
Yeah.
And I got in when Bitcoin was at 26 or 27,000, and it's already gone, and I'm already up. Like, and I'm just great. In 20 years, when I retire, whatever, 30 years, then I'll have a bunch of money. Like,
yeah, it's been compounding, I guess now, like 70% a year, right? Which is a lot. You know the rule of 72? So if you want to figure out how long it takes to double your money, you take the rate that you're making money and that's growing and divide it into 72. So let's say if you're making 7.2% on your investment, it would take 10 years to double, because 7.2 would go into 72, I believe, 10 times. So you get 10 years, take 10 years. So if Bitcoin has a 70% compounding rate, that means you're doubling your money on average every year. Right?
Nice.
Which is about right. I mean, if you it used to be higher. It used to be closer to 200% before the last downtrend, but I think now it's like around 70%. But this is not going to stop anytime soon. This compounding effect, and probably the greatest trader is really Stan Druckenmiller, who worked under Soros, right? Soros had the Quantum Fund, which was one of the best performing hedge funds ever. Then Stan Druckenmiller took it over. And I think it was for 20 years, he was averaging a 30% return. I think that might be the most successful Wall Street track record ever, I believe. But that's still 30% a year. And Bitcoin is still more than double that. And this guy is, 1 in a million, 1 in a 10 million. Paul Tudor Jones, who's a legend, he doesn't come close to that. Warren Buffett's, I think, compounding at 22% a year, so he's not matching that. The market itself, if you just buy an index fund, is I have to check, but it used to be, the number used to be 7.5% to 8%, but it might be higher now. So, but here with Bitcoin, you're talking about 70%, and the market capitalization should equal gold, and gold's at 13 trillion. Bitcoin just hit 1 trillion. So to get to gold, it's going to be 13x, just to match gold. And I think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah.
And then it should outperform gold because it's better than gold. And gold's being demonetized by Bitcoin. So really, the market cap of Bitcoin should be 20, 30 trillion. The total bond market's 200, 300 trillion. And Bitcoin is demonetizing the bond market. So that means it could be a 200x if it really attacks the bond market and demonetizes the bond market. The total sum of financial products on planet Earth is about 400 trillion. So if Bitcoin demonetizes the whole kettle of fish, you're talking about a 400x from the current price of 48,000 times 400 is a big number, a very big number per coin. Like over 10 million, I think.
10 million a coin. Yeah.
And this is what Hal Finney predicted it would get to 10 million.
And that's the thing. And that you said that to me on my show 3 years ago when you told me about the $400 trillion in total global assets. And I was like, that is realistic. Then, some Bitcoin shows are like make all these crazy predictions, but I was like, well, that's just dollars and cents. That's pure simple math.
Yeah, it's an asset class. I mean, I always looked at it as an asset class. Like I don't look at it at the technology so much, or I don't look at it, the philosophically so much. I look at it as an asset class because that's my background. I'm a stockbroker. So when I first heard about it in 2011, the question was, is this an asset class? And what is it? Is it a stock? Is it a bond? Is it a currency? Is it a commodity? So you get to the point, well, it's a commodity. It's a synthetic, digital, absolutely scarce commodity is what it is. And so as an asset class, it comes closest to gold, but it's better than gold in many ways. And when I was in 2011 at that conference in Prague, Max and Stacy were there, and Rick Falkvinja, who started the Pirate Party in Sweden, spoke. and he made the case as Bitcoin as an asset class, and said the forex market is worth X trillions of dollars, and if Bitcoin captures just 1% of that, it's 100,000 a coin. And at that time, it was $2. And but that made good sense to me. Now, Rick Fogveen, he like went crazy, as a lot of people in the early Bitcoin days became developed Bitcoin derangement syndrome, where they went insane. Because a lot of, when you look at Bitcoin in the early days, it's like looking into it is like a psychedelic kaleidoscope.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to look at it like for what it really is, and nobody else in the room or in within 100 miles is looking and seeing what you're seeing, like it can fuck with your mind. It totally rewires your mind.
Yeah.
And a lot of people went crazy. A good friend of mine, Charlie Shrem, who created BitInstant, which is the company in New York, he ended up getting in a little trouble. But when you talk to Charlie Shrem back in those days, he was in it in 2010 and very early. Like his eyes were like pinwheels when he spoke about Bitcoin, because he was seeing the future.
Right.
But it was also driving him insane.
Wow.
Like characters like Dennis Hopper in Apocalypse Now. Like
when he dies, it dies. When he dies, it dies.
Right. You can't land on a fraction, man. And it's just like, this is what the early Bitcoiners were like. They're just like going partially insane. So like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I got 1 foot in and I'm like, oh, man, should I take another foot in here? Because these guys are
going up down the river with Colonel Kurtz.
Are we going to Colonel Kurtz with this or what? Guys are going to jail. The Silk Road is getting busted. It's like, oh, are we going to get busted? Max and Stacy, like, we're very early and we're talking about it on RT and we're like, people are getting arrested. Silk Road went down. Charlie Shrem went down. We're like, can we even get on a plane? Are we going to get stopped? And we didn't leave France for a few years because we were afraid that we would get in trouble just crossing a border, being, identified as really the only global people talking about Bitcoin for those years were Max and Stacy, right? We were the only, if they wanted to arrest somebody and go after Bitcoin, we would be the most likely people to arrest. And our friends were all getting in some trouble in some way. And so it was, I credit Michael Saylor for taking Bitcoin out of the dark ages, really out of those period. And he really legitimized it in a big way. And the way he speaks about it is from somebody who did the homework. I mean, Michael Saylor is a guy who's an American success story, right? He comes from a middle-class guy, and he worked his way up, really. He goes to MIT. He starts a company. He's the longest-serving CEO in technology in America. And he's dedicated to education, and he gives back a lot to the community. And he hit the ground when he talked about Bitcoin in the first few days, like better than anybody else. Nobody came close. The way he, as a technologist and as a CEO, the way he talked about it was already head and shoulders above anybody else.
The way he articulates it, for especially somebody like me who doesn't grow up, doesn't have tech or finance background, I got it from listening to him, because he really just clarified it in such a simplistic term that you don't have to have all of these degrees. And I was like, oh, if this guy's getting it, this guy wouldn't be putting all of this money into it. There's no way if it was some Ponzi scheme or whatever anybody said.
He's incredibly important. Like Andreas Antonopoulos was really important in the 2012 for the period going forward. But Andreas had a kind of a political edge to him, because he grew up in Greece, and Greece has been a really political focus of civil unrest, and he
had big financial collapses there,
collapses and things. And so his lens was a little bit like, he's one of the best speakers of Bitcoin really ever. And into giving the whole philosophy of Bitcoin as well. But he also has, some politics that he brings to it. And so it's colored in that sense. Whereas Michael Saylor is like a pure mercenary, I guess. I don't want to make it sound in any way, in not in terms that are not, laudatory, but he just basically he deals in the world of board meetings and CEOs and regulators. That guy's been dealing with regulators his whole life, professional life. So his words are extremely parsed and chosen just to avoid regulatory issues. And that's the kind of thing I like to hear myself. It's like, I know that word would mean in a lawsuit what that word might mean that you might use in this case, and you're not using it. I know why, right? So, he's like, it's like, here's the prospectus of Bitcoin,
Yeah.
Here it is, and people reading it, it's amazing that more companies didn't follow him when it was at $10,000 to $12,000 a coin, because his pitch was fucking awesome. I mean, all these companies sitting on all this cash at the melting ice cube, as he calls it. I mean, every CFO of all those companies should be fired because they all heard it, and none of them acted on it, and they should all be fired because they're sitting on crappy fiat money that's going to the toilet, and they could all be like a MicroStrategy. I think they're up $6 billion in profit now. Forget the in profit, in the black.
And he bought the dip when the FTX thing. I mean, he
buys
just
it. Dollar cost average.
He just crushes everybody, man.
Well, they could have like a machine. Think about it this way: he can be using the Bitcoin on his balance sheet as collateral to keep floating more stock and more debt, to buy more Bitcoin, and as it goes up, it gives collateral value to issue more stock and more bonds. So he can dilute his shareholders forever because the price will always go up because it's based on Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? Like he can never dilute the shareholders enough. Like if you're the shareholder owner, he's going to say, I don't know how many shares they got outstanding. Let's say 500 million. And you say, I'm going to sell another 100 million shares. And usually people are like, oh, don't do that, you fuck. My stock's going to go down. But in this case, they're like, what are you waiting for? Yeah, dilute us some again and buy more Bitcoin. What are you waiting for? Yeah, load it up, do more debt. We don't care. Buy more Bitcoin. So it's like, you're a CEO. That's the thing you never hear. You go to a board meeting and they're like, how come you're not diluting us more? You idiot. You should be selling more stock, Michael.
And he just sits there and he's just like, yeah, I mean, imagine if you just wanted to, buy Manhattan in 1776 or 1876 or, in 1976. Yeah, it's probably still going to go up. Like he just says that to me, and I'm just like, I could do it. I just watched him so much that I was like, I got to get this guy down because he's just so like, I mean, it's apex predator. It's going to crush everything else. And I mean, so let's say his examples are. I could listen to a Michael Saylor example.
Yeah.
For days, and so he's great.